Kyrylo Chykhradze, Product Director at Crystal Blockchain. Crystal is the all-in-one blockchain investigative tool that provides a comprehensive view of the public blockchain ecosystem.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this session today. My name is Kyrylo Chykhradze. I'm going to speak about the peer-to-peer activity in general, and also I'll briefly touch the recent regulatory updates, because this cannot be ignored, given we are trying to figure out how things should be structured on that space. Again, my name is Kyrylo Chykhradze. I'm Product Director at Crystal, and I have to say a few words about what actually Crystal is and who we are. The Crystal blockchain is a part of Bitfury Group, and we went live back in 2018. And Crystal blockchain is a tool for ML and safety monitoring, and with that we offer our service for financial institutions and government authorities. On the market, we have a lot of different customers. Those are cryptocurrency exchanges, peer-to-peer services, banks, and some government authorities for sure. And this covers more than 150 companies worldwide. So we are all in agreement with what centralized exchanges are. However, I want to emphasize what we consider as decentralized exchanges and the peer-to-peer activity in particular. So what you see here is saying that we will be focusing on those entities that enables direct peer-to-peer activity, cryptocurrency transactions, and some sort of trading to take place online without any third party. And you may have heard about these services. Of course, you should be aware of that. I would name for sure Uniswap, local Bitcoins, BitMax, Paxful, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what is the difference between decentralized exchanges and centralized services? From our perspective, of course, decentralized means that no third party is involved into the trading process, while decentralized utilize custody, so they operate as a custody service for customers' assets. For decentralized services, we cannot, there is some contract or some technique behind the operations, while centralized services use another approach in their operations. They utilize hot wallets, they utilize cold wallets for as a store of value. And of course, they have databases of their users, and this results into the KYC required. So when it comes to decentralized services, usually no KYC or ML procedures are in place for such services. However, for centralized exchanges, we see that most of them have already introduced some policies, and some user data is being collected by these types of services. Of course, sometimes trading on centralized exchanges might be a pain, because it requires some sort of synchronization between different blockchains, and when it comes to centralized services, usually it's happening quite fast in terms of trading. And if you, for some reason, if you want to convert your cryptocurrency into fiat, in most cases, you'll be utilizing centralized exchanges that have this possibility to send your fiat money to your credit card or to your bank account. So why it's even important to make some sort of analysis on that activity? According to the block research, the most famous DeFi protocol, decentralized exchange called Uniswap, their trade volume exceeded Coinbase trade volume in last September. And of course, regulators had to respond to that somehow, and because there might be some room for money laundering. Actually, any asset that serves as a like transfer of value can be utilized for money laundering, and cryptocurrencies are not an exception to this rule. And moreover, in general, cryptocurrencies were promising us far more huge store of value than, for example, precious metals. And now, when we are entering the point of rapid adoption, it might become even worse in terms of money laundering. And now, when we are observing this bull run, let's say, which was heavily anticipated by all blockchain enthusiasts, that's happening right now. And of course, it might happen only if cryptocurrencies will be able to solve the problems which might not be solved by standard finance, by traditional financial system. And I'm talking about like unbanked users, I'm talking about those who have no access to lending instruments, and so on and so forth. So technically speaking, regardless of what we are talking about, cryptocurrencies or other stores of value, it doesn't matter what we want to refer to, the adoption and money laundering will be developing in parallel. And this requires like demand and reflection from the regulators. So what's happening on the regulators' landscape? It's been quite silent on a peer-to-peer specific regulatory requirements, and the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, intends to release a separate guidance on that, on the peer-to-peer activity this year. Sandra Garcia, who is the co-chair of the Financial Action Task Force Virtual Assets Contact Group, is saying that the FATF is still researching on peer-to-peer platforms, but that already refers to so-called unhosted wallets. So we expect more common amendments to the recommendations, which will include red flag indicators that will describe red flag indicators that might be related to this peer-to-peer activity. However, FinCEN proactively introduced a rule in December last year that would impose data collection requirements for unhosted wallets. Basically, we were saying that all the unhosted wallets need to be analyzed somehow, but no one has said what actually unhosted wallet means. And yeah, this year, FinCEN took a break and they decided to investigate this question in more details, and they decided to introduce more amendments later this year. Beside that, there's a parallel process on the travel rule side, and all that covers almost the same. So peer-to-peer activity on hosted wallets and travel rule, all this is related to almost the same type of activity. You may have heard about the travel rule that was firstly released in June 2019, when the FATF issued the guidance for so-called risk-based approach to virtual assets. And this required virtual asset service providers to share specific user information with different other counterparties, other virtual asset service providers, when a transaction exceeds $1,000. However, it was postponed due to a pandemic, and now it's under development again. And the last week, FATF released a new, they are saying that it's set to publish an update to its guidance on cryptocurrencies and virtual asset service providers, which will include updates on the travel rule in particular. And we expect this to be live this week or later in March. So we decided to conduct our own research to understand the volumes and the counterparties of these decentralized exchanges, to understand the activity within the peer-to-peer market. And we also want to confirm or compare these volumes to other blockchain players. In our system, we have around 16,000 of different services that operate with crypto. And beside that, within this, we have more than 100 peer-to-peer services and almost 800 entities that we can consider as centralized exchanges. So we compared those two groups, and here what we were able to come up with. But before we jump into the results, I want to come back to the Uniswap entity and make a quick overview of what we are able to see within our platform. So coming back to the September's activity that was mentioned in the block research, we did notice the same, let's say, activity, increased activity in September. And this activity is tremendous. Just today, I decided to open the Uniswap entity in our platform and filter up by the date, by the time frame. So I just picked this week for Uniswap entity, and I was able to understand that the amount of funds received by this entity now exceeds 1 million of Ethereum value, which equals, if I'm not mistaken, it's more than 1.5 billion of US dollars, which is quite substantial amount, I guess. And with that in mind, we jump into the quarter activity of peer-to-peer services comparing to non-peer-to-peer services, and we noticed. Again, since the market is in this bull run phase, volumes will be increasing, and it's proven by that chart that shows how actually peer-to-peer is growing and how it's growing with regards to the growth of non-peer-to-peer services. And you may notice this increased activity in the third quarter, which also was, the spike was also happening due to Uniswap increased activity. However, we see that I think that's not the limit, given DeFi is also in its bull run stage. So we might expect more and more activity happening around that. And it's also important to mention that we did not analyze the tokens activity here for Ethereum blockchain. So we also made this analysis for Ethereum transfers and BTC transfers. And when it comes to a source of funds, so we also need to understand what are the counterparties of these services. And we decided to make this analysis. And in order to do this, we had to categorize the counterparties in some way. And what we did is we made this breakdown into 4 categories, let's say. The first one would be so-called unhosted wallets. I know this not strict. There's no strict term for that, but we consider that as wallets that we consider as belonging to natural persons. Then we have exchange services. It's the third column here, and this includes all the exchange services like ATMs, peer-to-peer plus non-peer-to-peer services like standard exchange services, and so on and so forth. Then we have other WASPs, which is the second column, and this includes online marketplaces, gambling services, payment processors, and we have the last one, the risky entities, and this would stay for all types of, let's say, illicit activity, for instance, dark marketplaces, stone coins, scams, etc. And you see that the majority is coming from like other WASPs, and we have this percentage comparison here that is saying that for peer-to-peer services, there is a lot of funds that are coming from this quite big group that includes virtualized service providers that are related somehow to, let's say, non-regulator approach. When it comes to, it's also important to mention that unhosted wallets activity is also quite bigger for non-peer-to-peer services than for peer-to-peer, and that's kind of important outcome that we were able to come up with, because me personally expected that peer-to-peer activity will be mostly targeted by those who want to send their money from their hosted wallets to peer-to-peer service, and but apparently this research ended up with kind of different results. And it's also important to assess how many of the funds that are entering the different exchange services, what is the part of the funds that are considered as illicit activity. And we see that these numbers keep decreasing, because the overall trend on the industry is that this illicit activity continues to decrease. And for peer-to-peer and non-peer-to-peer services, this is kind of the same pattern. So it's not so big deal, and these numbers are not so big to. Well, it's still kind of several hundred of millions, but it's less than 1% in terms of overall volumes of those services. However, it's kind of huge amount of any activity, including peer-to-peer activity over there. And we believe that with the kind of weighted approach on regulations alongside the blockchain analytics usage, all of us would be able to make cryptocurrencies a bit safer and a bit easier to use for everyone, not only for peer-to-peer, but for all the blockchain market players. With this in mind, I think I'll stop right here, and I would encourage you to subscribe on our newsletters, to subscribe on our Twitter account, because there are a lot of different researches are coming this year, and hope you'll stay in touch. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through my mailbox that is present right here.